Hey guys, I'm Tammy and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to sew a really cute denim skirt. So I've had this denim fabric in my stash for ages. If I give you a bit of a close-up, you can just see the ridges on the fabric. I just think it's going to be perfect for summer and also for autumn. So I thought that'd be the perfect project to take you along with me today. I'm going to be using the Simi Skirt pattern today. If you don't know what that is, it's a button front skirt and it comes in sizes 6 to 32. At the back it has a waist dart to give a really nice fitted silhouette, and then the button detail at the front. It makes it a really easy closure. I'll leave a link down below on where you can find this pattern. This one also actually comes with patch pockets on the front, but I want to create a really sleek looking skirt, so I'm going to omit that detail when I'm sewing this version. So let's go ahead and cut out this fabric. So I've got everything cut out for the skirt pattern. I've got 2 fronts and 2 backs, and then I've also got my facing piece as well to finish the waistband really nicely. I'm just going to give everything a really quick iron. Now you are meant to interface the waistband and also the front section of the skirt, but I completely run out of interfacing, so I'm not going to be using that today, but I definitely recommend doing that if you want a bit more of a stable finish. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is sewing the back darts on the back of the skirt. I like to mark mine using a pen directly on the wrong side of the fabric. It just makes it easier for me to line up. And then I pinch the point of the dart and fold the end, and then I'll use pins to just help pin it in place. So hopefully you can see there, I've used the pins to pin the dart in place. That's one side. And then the other side looks like that. The whole point is the pin is meant to go through the line at the front and the back evenly. So I'm going to do that for the other skirt and sew them at the sewing machine. So I've gone ahead and sewn that dart, and that is what it looks like from the right side, and the wrong side looks like that. I like to press them towards the center back just to make it nice and neat when you're wearing it. Now we're going to basically finish all the raw edges of the front and back skirt separately. So I've got one piece right here. This is the back skirt. Basically going to finish this raw edge over here and also this raw edge over here. So you're basically finishing the center front and center back seams and also the side seams on all the skirt pieces. I like to do this on my overlocker, but you can use pinking shears or even a zigzag stitch on your normal sewing machine. I've just aligned the center back seam for the skirt right here. You can see I've clipped it in place. I personally like doing it this way, first overlocking and finishing the raw edges and then sewing the seam, because it means when you press it open, you get a really nice flat seam, and it also just looks really pretty from the inside. So I'm going to sew that using a 1 centimeter seam allowance and then pressing it open. Now, like I said, I'm going to press the seam open, and one thing I like to do is use a tailor's clapper at the end. I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to get some steam and just press this open. And then what I'll do is get my tailor's clapper and press it down. And that will just help flatten the seam really nicely, especially on thick fabric like denim. So let me repeat that down there. Press this nice and flat, and then get your tailor's clapper and press that on top. And because I did that, you can see just how nice and flat that middle seam lays, that center back, and that is the back skirt together now. So that's the back side, and then the right side looks like that. It's so nice and clean and crisp. And that's why I really recommend using a tailor's clapper, especially when you're using heavy fabric like denim. Now I'm going to put this on the table and put the front skirts directly on top and line the side seams. So now I'm just going to press the seams open at the side seams like we did at the center back. It should look something like this now. Again, I'm just going to open up the seam and then I'll use my tailor's clapper as well. Now when you press this seam, this one actually has a bit of a curve to it to go and complement your hips. So you have to take your time when you're pressing this curve. I like to kind of pull and manipulate the seam so it lies flat. You could totally also use a tailor's ham when pressing this because it has got a curve at the side seam. So now we've pressed that curve open like that. You can see from the right side it's going to lay so much nicer on the body. So let me do that for the other side. So I've got the skirt opened out in front of me behind me, and I've basically looks like one big long piece right here. We've got the back pieces together and then the front is attached at the side seams. I basically made the construction method of this pattern super easy to follow. So what we're going to do next is finish the raw edge of the bottom, and then we're also going to finish the raw edges of the facing pieces. And this just means when you finish the skirt and look on the inside, it looks super professional and neat, and it just makes a really nice piece for your handmade wardrobe. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on my overlocker. Again, you can totally use a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine, but I personally think it just looks so much neater on an overlocker. So this is the waistband facing. You can see it's nice and big, and that's what we're going to attach directly to the waistband of the skirt. I went ahead and just sewed the front and back pieces together, pressed them open, and then also finished the raw edge using my overlocker, like you can see right there. Now I'm going to take you over to my table because we're going to fold the skirt in such a way that makes the facing really neat once it's finished and sewn. So I've got the right side of the skirt facing up, and what we're going to do is go to the front right here. This is the center front, and there should be a notch that you marked. We're basically going to fold the skirt at the notch, just at that waist bit there, and then I'm going to pin that in place and do the exact same here. I'm going to fold it over just the top section and pin that in place, and then we're going to take our waistband piece with right side facing down and pin that directly on top. That raw edge seam, we're pinning to the raw edge of the waist. So now you can see I've pinned the facing to the waist edge all along, and I've made sure it goes over that fold that we have. Now I'm going to sew this at the sewing machine, just using a normal straight stitch. So you can see right here, I've sewn the waist facing all the way along, and it looks like that. What I'm going to do now is get my scissors, and I'm just going to clip the corner at both ends. So where we have that folded edge, I'm just going to clip it, and then do the same at the other side. So that's what that corner edge looks like. That's the center front seam. What we're going to do is turn it right side out like that. And I'm just going to use one of these point turners to make the point nice and sharp. So that's what that corner looks like. This is the center front, and that's naturally creating a button stand. So I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. It does feel a bit like magic when you do this because you're basically just creating a button stand without having to actually do much. But I found this was definitely the easiest method that I used when I was testing different construction methods. So let me zoom you in and show you what we've just done. So this is just one side of the skirt, and you can see the facing is flapping about right now because we haven't pressed or understitched it yet. But you can see here at the center front edge, we've created a really nice neat corner, and that's exactly what we want on both the center front edges. And this is going to become our button stand and the facing will lie really nicely towards the wrong side. So I'm going to go ahead and press this to make it easier to sew the next step. So I've gone ahead and just pressed that corner nice and flat, and also the button stand. Now you can see here that the waistband, the waist facing, is all kind of wobbly and all over the place. What we're going to do is actually push the seam allowance of the facing towards the facing. And then as we do that, we're going to understitch all along the facing edge. And that just means that when we stitch the seam allowance towards the facing, it will stop it from rolling around, and it'll be so much easier to press to get a nice finish. Now when we put it into the sewing machine, we're not going to be able to understitch all the way at the corner, so we're going to have to open it out and just stitch maybe 2 or 3 inches away and then continue along the facing. So now that I've understitched that facing, I can now roll it over to the wrong side like that and press it nice and flat. So like this. And that will just help the facing lay correctly and stop rolling towards the right side of the fabric. So I'm going to press that along the entire facing. So now you should be able to see the facing has been pressed to the wrong side of the fabric like that, and it looks so nice and clean from the inside, and that's what it looks like all along. Now to prevent this from rolling to the right side, what we're going to do is a thing called stitching in the ditch. And basically if I turn it to the right side, you can see that you can't actually see the facing, it's inside the skirt. But what we want to do is at the seams where we have a seam like this, we've got a line here, this is a center back seam. We're going to actually stitch directly in that line to help tack the facing down. And I'm going to do that at the center back and the side seams, and it just helps everything lay correctly. So let me show you what that looks like. So from the right side, you can't actually see a stitch because it should be invisible directly in that seam. But from the wrong side, I use a different color thread. You can see it's slightly gray and it's inside the facing. So you can't actually see that from the right side, but it just means it tacks the facing down so it won't move around. So the waistband is looking like that. Now that's completely sewn. What we're going to do is finish the hem nice and neatly. So I've got the hem of the skirt here, and this is the wrong side facing up. I'm going to turn it around. So now we've got the right side facing up. And you can see there's a bit of a crease because we actually press the button stand towards the wrong side. What we're going to do at the hem here, we're going to fold it over at that crease, and I'm going to clip that in place. And then I've got my ruler, and we're actually going to mark 2 centimeters or 6/8 of an inch from the bottom and draw a line there. And now I'm actually going to sew on my sewing machine from here to here and stop at the edge of the facing, and I'm going to do that for both sides. So hopefully you can see here I've gone ahead and sewn that piece right there, and I stopped at the facing. What I'm going to do is get my scissors, and I'm just going to clip this little corner here, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. And then in the same way I'm going to fold that facing like that, and as I've done that you can see it's going to create a nice clean corner like we did at the waistband. And then again I'm just going to use this tool right here and actually use that to make a nice sharp corner. So now the hem should look like this. You can see we've turned out that corner the same we did up there for the waistband. And now we're going to use the iron, and you can see naturally the hem is just kind of folding up here. What we're going to do is just press that all along at the same width, so 2 centimeters or 6/8 of an inch all along, and then we'll sew that in place. So now the skirt should look something like this. It's practically finished. All we have to do is sew on the buttons. So let me put that back down. You can use any buttons to sew this skirt. I like to use 2 centimeter wide buttons. So I don't know if I should use these gold ones that I've actually used before, or if I should try these kind of tortoisey shell ones. They look like this in person. They're really, really cute. I think I am going towards these ones more. Now this pattern actually comes with a button guide, so you can use this and put it on your skirt to see where the buttonhole should actually be placed. So I've got the skirt down here on the table, and this is the right side facing out. And I think I am going to use these buttons right here. I think they look cuter when they're on the white skirt. So you are going to want to have 5 buttons, and this is the guide that I have. I like to place that on top and then literally use a pen and just mark directly where the buttons are actually going to go. What I'll do is just use my finger and use that to help me mark where the buttonhole will go. And you can use this as a guide. It's totally up to you where you place your buttonholes, but it helps just make sure they're evenly distributed. So here you can see I've marked a rough line on where the buttonholes are going to go. And you can always do a little T at the bottom as well to know that's the center. Now the sewing machine I'm using is the Brother Innovis VQ4. Absolutely love that machine. It's definitely quite an advanced one, so you can use any machine for this. But this specific machine comes with this button foot, and it's really, really good at sewing buttonholes perfect each time round. Like, I know in previous machines it's been really hit and miss whether the buttonhole is going to turn out right, but on this machine they literally are perfect every single time. So with this one, you basically pull open the guide like that, and then you put your button inside it and close it up, and then that will actually tell you automatically how wide the buttonhole is actually going to make it. So I don't do anything. Once I do this, I literally press the buttonhole setting, put this foot up, and it will automatically calculate how wide the buttonhole needs to be because I've put this button inside it. So hopefully you can see there it's made that buttonhole, and what I'll do is just sew the rest of the buttons and then I'll cut that open. So the buttonholes have now been sewn. So from the right side, hopefully you can see, it might be a bit hard because it is white, they look like that all along. And then from the wrong side, they've got a slightly different thread colour, so you can see it a bit more clearly like that. Now I did 5 buttonholes right there, and now what I'm going to do is basically cut them open. I like to use this one right here. It's a buttonhole chisel, and basically use this to really cut open your buttonholes nice and neatly. Now one thing I always have trouble with, and I still haven't found a solution for, is when you cut open your buttonholes, the fabric just frays at the buttonholes naturally. Even when I put things like fray check on, it always frays. Sometimes when it's gone through the wash a few times that does go away, but I would love to know if you have any tips on how to stop your buttonholes from fraying, because whenever I try fray check that doesn't really work. That's specifically why I got one of these, because that's also meant to be better than using a seam ripper. But let me know if you have any suggestions in the comments. Now like I said, I'm going to cut open the buttonholes and then I'll go ahead and actually mark where I want the buttons to be on the corresponding front piece. But it's looking really cute and it's so nearly done. So I've put the cutting mat down as well, because you definitely want to use that to protect your table. But once you do that, you get your buttonhole chisel, or you just get your normal seam ripper and you basically rip open the buttonhole. So I'm just going to do that by applying some pressure like that. And you just want to do that along the entire buttonhole. And as I've done that, you can see I've now made the buttonhole. So I've gone ahead and opened up all the buttonholes, and you can see that is what that looks like. And all along you can see they're nicely opened, and that's because of that buttonhole chisel. I definitely recommend that instead of using a seam ripper. Now what I'm going to do is lie this on the table, and then I'm actually going to use a pen to just help me align where to put the buttons. So I'm just placing that nice and flat, and then I'm going to line the buttonholes on top like that. And I'm going to overlap it by the amount the facing, so how wide that facing is. And then what I like to do is get a pen and just do a little dot in the center of the buttonhole. So I go through the buttonhole and draw a dot on the other side of the fabric. You just want to rearrange so you're always making sure that it's the same width along. So like that. And now that I've done that, hopefully you can see I've marked the buttons and where they need to go. So now that I've marked those in place, I'm definitely going to use these ones to sew onto that side of the skirt. I like to just use a normal needle. I have a pack of these that it's actually my grandma's that I just took from her because she doesn't use it anymore. And got some white thread right here, and I'm going to go ahead and just start sewing the buttons onto that side of the fabric. I actually find sewing buttons super therapeutic. Like, it's a really simple task and it's something I just really enjoy doing now. So I'm just finding the end and then putting that through my needle. But honestly, this is actually such a simple pattern to sew. It's great for beginners that want to sew something that they're actually going to get a lot of wear out of. And it also looks super professional and neat from the inside. I'll show you what it looks like on the inside once we're done. But all we're basically going to do now is just sew the buttons on and the entire skirt will be finished. So just tie a little knot at the end of the thread. I like to do 2 or 3 just to make sure it's really secure. You can actually sew buttonholes on your sewing machine. I had a video that showed you how to do that. I personally still like to sew them by hand because I just enjoy it. But I basically go through the bottom and line up where I marked that dot, and then I'm going to go ahead and just start sewing the buttonhole on. But I just love making sewing patterns that are just so super easy to sew, but also they just result in a really nice garment at the end. Like, I don't believe sewing has to be the most complicated process. It's totally up to you if you want to sew things that are much more advanced and more complex to sew, to maybe challenge your skills and whatnot. But I personally just like to sew things that give me a result quite quickly, but also garments that have a really nice finish on the inside and the out, and you know they're going to last a really long time. So I like to go a few times first in the center. This button has 4 holes, so I kind of do across and then I go back up and I do the opposite direction, kind of like making a plus shape when you're sewing the thread. So like this, I've done maybe 3 or 4 and I've made a plus shape with the thread. Then what I like to do is come up from underneath and then I'll kind of make a circle like 2 or 3 times to help stabilize the thread, and then I go ahead and tie the thread off. So if you don't know, I also actually wrote a book and it released this year, and in that I actually took step-by-step photographs and have like a whole tutorial on how to sew key things like buttons and seam finishes and just everything you'll need to know when you're sewing your own clothes. So if you're a complete beginner and you don't even know where to start, I'll leave a link down below and where you can find my book. It's called So Simple, and honestly the whole point of it was to just create the book I wish I had when I first started sewing, because I know how hard it is to get started, especially when there's just so much information online. So definitely check that out. So now I've gone ahead and I've just tied a knot a few times at the button, and then I'm going to cut it off, and that is the first button sewn. So I went ahead and finished sewing the buttons on the skirt, and that is what it looks like now that it's completely finished. I absolutely love this. So you can see this is denim, so it definitely has a bit more structure. And then the buttons that I use are these really cute brown ones like that. Oh, I love this. So the original pattern, the Simi Skirt, does have pockets, but I decided to take them off on this version because I wanted a bit more of a clean silhouette, and I love how that looks. Let me go ahead and show you what it looks like on me. I hope you enjoyed seeing how I sew the Simi Skirt pattern. I honestly love it. You can find the sewing pattern on my website. It comes in sizes 6 to 32 and it's such a staple skirt pattern to have in your wardrobe. I sewed this morning I started around 10 o'clock and now it's 12:40, so a couple of hours and I've got the finished skirt, which is amazing. I would say it's definitely a project you can sew and cut in an afternoon. I'll put a few examples on screen on some of the pattern testers that I had sew this pattern and they absolutely loved it, so I know you're going to love it too. Make sure to click the link in the description box to check out this sewing pattern. I honestly think you're going to love it. I also just love the fact that I sewed it in denim. It's given it such a nice texture as well. You can just barely see it on screen, but look how adorable that skirt is. Oh, and if I show you the insides, so this is what it looks like from the inside. This is the front of the skirt. You can see the waist is completely concealed with that nice facing, and then we've got the side seams and the button placket down the front, and then at the back It's nicely concealed again with that waist facing, and then you've also got the back darts as well. The hem looks like this because we obviously use that turning method at the corner, so it's really nicely finished, and then you sew it along down at the bottom. Honestly, it's one of those projects that look really nice from the inside and the outside, and you'll be finished with a really gorgeous skirt. Thank you so much for watching this video, and definitely let me know in the comments how you think the skirt turned out. I honestly love it, and it's one of those things I can wear throughout the year. I've left a coupon code down below as well, so I hope you enjoy sewing this pattern. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.